Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. Excited to be here as we gear up for our webinar. We want to do a deep dive into cannabis extraction, focusing on the critical aspects of permitting and regulatory compliance. It's my pleasure to introduce two remarkable individuals who will be at the forefront of this insightful discussion. First, let me introduce you to Pat Norris. He's the Director of Operations at Luna Technologies. Pat's journey is a fascinating one. Before diving into the world of cannabis, his background was rooted in industrial piping, particularly in the pharma and semiconductor sectors. Pat's been overseeing all aspects of our manufacturing and installations and all approvals for all of our Luna equipment for the past 6 years, making him a seasoned pro in this industry. But what makes our webinar exciting for today and truly special is our featured expert, Usama Tohid. Usama is the CEO and principal engineer at Peer Review and Verification Engineers, and he's really a true authority in the cannabis extraction game. Usama's expertise relies in safety protocols, regulations, and facility design with a dynamic expertise that it also includes legislation and diverse rules across jurisdictions. His insight also addresses the strategies for really staying informed in this industry and adapting to the ever-changing legislative and rules within the industry and within the states. So our goal for this webinar today is to provide you with not just knowledge and actionable insights that can guide you in your business, but we want to also make this a interactive presentation, and we want to make it a conversation. So we want you to jump in with your questions and feel free to make the discussion lively. Just put them in the chat, and I'll be happy to facilitate those for the guys as they begin. So let's dive in right away and hope to have this interactive experience and explore the intricacies of cannabis extraction and regulatory compliance with Pat and Usama. Without further ado, I'd like to throw it over to Pat, who will take it from here. And we appreciate everyone joining. Hopefully it's informative. Over to you, Pat.
Thanks, Michael, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining. So let's just jump into some questions for Usama. So starting off, how does PRV engineers assist cannabis extraction businesses in navigating the complex and ever-changing regulatory environment?
First of all, hi, everyone. I'm Usama. Now back to your question. We do quite a bit of stuff, pretty much from start to the finish. We could assist our clients. We analyze equipment, facilities for pressure safety and for fire safety. And we make sure that equipment is compliant to all the relevant codes, which is International Fire Code or the Jurisdictional Fire Code, other NFPA codes, NFPA 58. If it's a BHO system, NFPA 30, if it's a ethanol system, NFPA 33 for what the installation are. And at the end of the day, we review the system for, is it going to hold the pressure? Is it going to be compliant if the materials used are going to be compliant to the solvents? So we analyze that system, and that document is called peer review. That is the bread and butter. As we say, that's the most important part of the compliance process, that equipment and facility that you have is reviewed by a professional engineer. Once we have analyzed that, we have prepared a peer review document. Next stage is, for example, a Luna machine, it's already peer reviewed and it's gets installed in a facility. Then the client would have to call us to the facilities to check the installation, if it's installed properly per the proper codes, according to the document, which is the peer review document, and if the field installation is according to that, according to the different codes, that would be the field inspection part of it. A lot of other services, we analyze the entire facility, do process hazard analysis on airflow, technical assistance report for the fire departments, We do the architect and mechanical, electrical, plumbing plans, which is, getting your facility approved from scratch, or if you, buy a new facility and want all the engineering done, that's what we provide as well.
Great, thank you. This next one is more based on like an overview of navigating regulations to get a lab operational. What are the key challenges businesses typically face in obtaining permits, ensuring compliance, and then could you share some insights on kind of the time frame of this process?
Excuse me. Time frame. So, the process, it could be a very complicated process no matter where you're starting a new facility at. You can start at California, Colorado, Oregon, East Coast. The basic core process remains the same. All the equipment that you install, that needs to be compliant. Compliant in the sense that, for example, a chiller you're getting, it needs to be either peer reviewed or UL listed or the system you're getting, it needs to be peer reviewed or UL listed. It needs to follow all the proper codes that the fire codes have been provided to us to use. It needs to be, again, the complications start when people, think they could buy just any equipment and install it. And I've been to facilities where, even the equipment was fine. I peer-reviewed the equipment, but it's installed in like a room where there's no proper ventilation. So it's important to have it done properly, installed properly, in the sense that you're going to have a C1D1 area, which is a safe area for your extraction equipment. You're going to have an equipment that is already reviewed by a professional engineer. That is very important because that's going to throw you back by a few months. But even if it is compliant, there's a process to it. You get your mechanical drawings, your electrical drawings, your plumbing drawings, your architect drawings. For the new facility you got those approved. Then the equipment you're going to install in there, that needs to get approved. Then, you begin the construction phase. You get the equipment installed. You call an engineer to field inspect it. You get the facility process hazard done. And then once that is completed, a fire department or any jurisdiction individual will come to your facility, check the installation, and hopefully everything was done properly. Then he will pass and get going. But I would still say a minimum, if everything is done perfectly, is probably a 6 months. And I've seen projects go for up to 3 years, 4 years, or some never completed because people didn't adhere to the laws, adhere to the codes, and that could make you go back by several years, make you use millions of dollars. So I think that's what the basic idea is. If you follow the codes to the maximum, to the most strictest possible, then you should be able to save, in some cases, 3 years in the time that you could start working. Okay,
fantastic. Mm-hmm. And to kind of keep going on the same line of questioning, as we all know, the permit process between the equipment manufacturer, your engineering group like PRV, the fire marshals, as well as the jurisdiction you're in, all kind of have to intertwine and work together. How does PRV kind of help customers navigate through that?
Can you repeat that question, Pat? Sorry.
I was just stating how with this process, for instance, you need to have your peer review sometimes at the beginning when you submit your application, or you also need to submit them to a specific fire marshal, or certain states have, LPG commissions that they need to be submitted to. How do you guys kind of assist the customer in helping with that?
Well, you gotta, of course, you have to understand who your authority having jurisdiction is, first of all. That's the most important. And for example, I'll use Luna as an example, right? Like we have a process where, the first thing we do is we send the peer review to the authority having jurisdiction, even sometime before purchase. It's the best idea to do, do your homework, get the machine, select the machine you like, and then send it. We send the peer review document right away. That would at least give the fire marshal an idea. This is the equipment you're getting. And other than that, there's always changes, right? There's going to be always small changes. There's going to be sometimes a valve is not available. So the best idea is, communicate with us right away. This is the system's going to be, and then we submit the document accordingly to the authority having jurisdiction, so there's no problems later on. And, other than that, I mean, our goal is to make sure your life moves smoothly. And I think, with equipment manufacturers like Luna, it's never been a problem that their system peer review was submitted and we're not able to get it approved, because, if things are built properly, approved properly, it should move smoothly.
Fantastic. And yeah, and you kind of mentioned sometimes there are different requirements based on, it could be the fire marshal or who's ever inspecting the equipment. For instance, we had a customer who their jurisdiction requested they modify the pour valve on our machine to have a tri-clamp end cap that they could use during the processes. So it's really beneficial, and we all work together because they request it. We tell Usama, hey, we're making this change, and then that peer review gets updated. So you've mentioned third-party engineering peer reviews a few times. So kind of just want to ask you just to provide a little more information on them, what all they entail, and why customers need them.
Hey, before we jump into that real quick, Josie had a question. Sorry if I butchered your name, but what do you know about the NFPA 420? Is that,
I'll jump to
can
that.
you elaborate on that a little bit?
I check on that 3 times a week when it's going to come out. It hasn't come out. It's still in development phases. It's pretty much going to take all the different codes like IFC 2021 Chapter 38, NFPA 1 Chapter 38. IFC 2021 is Chapter 39. NFPA 58, NFPA 30. All the different requirements are going to put it in one code. And that's what NFPA 420 is going to be. And hopefully it comes out soon.
Fantastic. Yeah, I'm sure if people are already in the industry, different states, depending on where you're doing the installs, will all reference either different NFPA sections or IFC. So bringing these all together will be super beneficial for the industry to have one set of codes to be following.
Yeah.
So back on that question, if you wouldn't mind going a little deeper into the third-party engineering peer review and why you need it.
So I kind of briefly touched on it. Any equipment that's installed, it needs to be properly listed. And how listing happens is, the safety of the equipment is analyzed by every single view, pressure safety analysis, material compatibility analysis, thermal analysis. But it's our industry, it's, when you have equipment, people buy equipment, there's 10 different manufacturers probably here who do want to run things differently. So there's not really one way to say, oh, this is how the equipment is going to be, and we're going to have it listed. So that's where the fire departments have said, okay, have a professional engineer review the different aspects of it, which is do pressure vessel analysis by using SME codes, do material compatibility, thermal compatibility, structure analysis, how the pressure relief valve CFM. So we analyze those different things. There's like 14 points in the International Fire Code that we follow for each document, and once you have satisfied all those 14 points for the machine, then it's approved. The document for a BHO machine probably looks about 100 to 150 pages. Has different pressure analysis, has even analyzed small things like your connections and your clamps. Every single thing would be looked at in a microscope, and then we issue a document saying that it's good to go. And that is what the peer review document is. I think that kind of goes to that.
Yeah, definitely. And then so everyone knows. So for instance, for Luna, we have a letterhead that we can send to AHJs or potential customers that kind of go over the details of the peer review. And then with the purchase of the equipment, you get what's called a wet stamp peer review, where Usama will go in, he'll put your actual serial number, the business name, business install address, and then change it to the specific codes that your jurisdiction follows. And then he will then submit that with, an actual signature, his engineering stamp on it.
Yes.
The next one is jumping into field inspections. Different jurisdictions require, per which code they follow, require different either equipment and or full lab inspections. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we talked about NFPA 420. That would make sure that the field inspection is not only like required by jurisdiction, it is required by the code everywhere. Because I definitely believe field inspection is very important because, like I mentioned earlier, yes, we analyze the equipment. For example, Luna equipment, one of the safest equipment out there, and we analyze it is safe and good to go. But let's say it gets installed, but before I touch on field inspection, I want to kind of briefly talk about what a safe environment is. LPG system or butane propane system needs to be installed in a room called a C1D1 room, which is a safe hazardous environment. It is built to stand the worst case scenario where a vessel is leaking butane in the room. And if familiar with the butane and propane, once they're leaking in the room, it could lead to a huge explosion. So that's why they need to install a room where if there is the worst case scenario and the system got, let's say, damaged, nobody noticed, or, anything could happen. An earthquake happened and the system fell and started leaking. So you need to be in a room where it has proper hazardous exhaust. All the electricals are built in a sense that they're explosion proof. There's other safety features, like there's a gas detector that kicks the fan higher to higher speed. Make sure that, if there is a leak, it will be taken care of with a higher fan speed. So that's the kind of environment it needs to be in, and we could go back to that. Operator error, I saw someone said that. Yes, that's a huge thing. Operator error could happen too. We're all humans, and it could lead to deaths. It has led to deaths. In this industry, paintwood industry, a lot of industry that's happened. So that's why it's important to make sure, like we said from the start, get an engineer involved, get a company like Luna involved, get a booth company involved, and have a proper environment that's installed in, and then call us in. And when we go in, that's the first thing I'm talking about. We check if it's installed in a proper environment. If it's not, then then that's rejected. You cannot have a machine running. If that safeguard, that second step of field inspection wasn't there, then we just submit the document. And if the fire marshal, sometimes they're not knowledgeable, and something, it's not like they're not knowledgeable, they're just not used to of this industry, and it helps them to have an engineer do the field inspection and give them the peace of mind that, okay, this machine is installed properly. The first step would be checking if it's installed in a proper room, like a C1D1 room for a butane, C1D2 room for an ethanol extraction. Next would be making sure the system is installed properly. Like I just talked about, and Pat just said, sometimes clients make small changes, and those could happen because they bought a old system, or they bought a system that, at one time it happened as one of the systems couldn't fit, so they had to make a change. But we weren't aware, and when I did a field inspection, I had to tell them, look, you have to put it back, or you have to update the document. I'm not talking about Luna system in this case, but it's just another reference. So it's very important to make sure, because changes are part of life. That's why we have the peer reviews, and we want to make sure those changes are safe, and that's why the field inspection takes place.
And
what's it typically, if I may, what does it typically cost? I mean, it costs money to get a lab up and running. What does a field inspection cost?
Field inspection cost, depends on how big the lab is, how much work it is on our part. Usually, let's say a Luna system installed, it costs about the range of $3,000 to $4,000, depending on where we're going. But if it could be a lot of things. It could be they have 10 systems, and of course the price is going to be different because we're going to have to analyze every single system. So that could range, but it's not like, okay, it's going to cost you $100,000. That's never going to happen.
Okay.
And is PRV? Are you guys able to go in and do full lab inspections if, for instance, a customer bought a Luna and they had other equipment that they needed inspected?
Yeah, we have done that. We've done peer reviews for pretty much everyone in the industry. We have done peer review for so many clients who have custom systems. For example, they have a Luna, and then they have other ethanol systems that are installed, and then we do process piping, peer reviews, things like that. But yeah, we do the entire facility, different kinds of extraction rooms. Even if it's a custom room, then we make sure there's a process hazard analysis done if a BHO system is installed or an ethanol system is installed. But yeah, we do the complete from A to Z.
Your team's in California, but you'll travel wherever.
Oh yeah, my team is in. My team is. We have a remote office, so it's in different states. But I'm in California personally. But yeah, we travel a lot. I mean, we go to Michigan a lot. We go to Oregon, Washington. I mean, we've been to pretty much. At this point, I think we have done field inspection in about 30 states already, and we're licensed to do in all 50.
Great.
Great. So next question. You're pretty much just talking about it. Figure we could go a little more in depth. So safety, as we know, is a critical concern in the extraction industry. What essential safety protocols must extraction businesses implement to meet regulatory requirements and ensure the well-being of their employees and the community?
Oh, that's a tough question because there are many layers to it. First thing I said, of course, have a safe system, field inspected properly. If there's changes, you tell your engineer, you believe in them. They want your best, and that's what we want for you. We want your best. We want to get it compliant. It's installed in a proper area, C1D1 area for an extraction, BHO extraction. That's a given. So that's your first line of safety. There's other safety measures like you gotta have proper SOPs. Because I've seen C1D1 room was properly done, extraction equipment was proper, but they did not have proper SOPs. So after extraction, they took out the trays and they didn't off-gas them properly, and it led to a small fire. But luckily, no one was hurt. But it could get small things like that could lead to accident. So have proper SOPs. For example, off-gas. Try to do your off-gassing in your extraction room. That's one thing I always tell everyone, my clients or not. Other things are like, proper designation. Your C1D1 room cannot open into a non-classified area. A lot of people make that mistake, put electrical right outside the door, give it a little buffer, draw a rectangle around it with the yellow and red and black tape and stays your C1D2 zone. Don't put any electricals in there. A lot of other safety things, proper mask, proper gear, always have mask, even if non-extraction facility, even if you're just doing a grow, please have your employees wear proper mask. I know one company had that accident. I'm not going to say anyone's name, but yeah, it could happen to anyone, even without extraction, even without hazardous solvent, or even without enrichment. It was just someone packing cannabis and they inhaled something and led to some bad accident. So proper gear, proper eyeglasses. Make sure your employees are not taking phones inside an extraction area because they could explode too. A lot of little things come into play. That's another thing. We have prepared a checklist. Sometimes when the clients do the entire facility with us, we provide that checklist. They go through this checklist, make sure everything is compliant. So that's some of them. The list. This list is huge. So every little thing. Make sure it's clean. A little tripping could lead to big explosion. Yeah. Bonded and grounded system. Make sure your system is grounded. There's a lot of little things come into play, which is not enough time to talk about here, I would say.
You must have been in some facilities where you've seen quite a few red flags. Can you maybe tell us a little bit of story about that?
I've been to facilities where it was like a shed, and I had to say no. This is rejected right away. I have been to facilities that people had the idea that they were going to do open loop extraction, and that would have led to that. What do you call that? Blasting?
Open blasting. Yeah.
Open blasting. Yeah. They were going to do some open blasting. I was like, okay, I'm out of here. But that client actually fixed it. They got a good closed system. And now they're actually running it still. So I'm happy knowing people sometimes they don't know the code, right? That's why they need people like us. They need companies like Luna to teach them how to move forward. And I mean, I'm happy this person is still running. One time there was a centrifuge sitting right outside. No regulation, just outside, not in a building. Even though it's not that dangerous as inside, but still, like, it's just sitting there without any proper measures. And that guy's still running. Luckily, he moved that centrifuge away. So
Yikes.
have cases where they didn't want to listen and they never got going. So please listen to us, because our goal is, of course, everyone's goal is to make money, but our goal is also to make sure that our clients are happy. And that's how we make money. When our clients are successful, we're successful. So that's the bottom line.
Yeah, I was just reading on Future 4200. Somebody was trying to fundraise because they rented their place out to a couple extractors and apparently burned their whole house and barn down. And the guy was like, "Hey, we're doing a GoFundMe because our place is burned down." So again, true or not, I don't know, but that's what they're posting. It's wild.
Yeah.
It's scary.
Another big safety thing that I see coming from like the industrial construction sector, right, where safety is drilled in people's mind day in, day out, just on massive projects. Because we're such a young industry, a lot of just it's definitely improving, but a lot of the standard OSHA regulations for just labs or grows of trip hazards and kind of the stuff that has been implemented in all other major sectors, and it's just kind of lagging a little bit behind. It's just such an easy thing that these things are already spelled out so well. So we definitely always, point people in the direction just to, there's no reason that extraction or the cannabis industry needs to be lagging behind these other industries, especially with, our growth and our projected growth.
Hey, there's a question here from Joshua in Spanish. That's what I've heard. Do you think that in 2023, you guys can see it there, right, in the chat, NFPA NEC 70 gets adapted by jurisdictions will change the classification of hazardous areas for LPG extraction? Article 512 seems to change some things about C1, D1 for LPG extraction. And Jose's in Puerto Rico. So
I think it's Josue.
tuning in.
So I'm going to go with that.
Jose, yeah, okay, there you go. Thank you.
I definitely believe that there is it should stay C1, D1, because we're preparing for the worst. Like, you have to prepare for the worst. And it's led to less accidents. Yes, an argument could be made that it could be, if it's closed, 100% closed, it could make a C1, D2. But I would still say, like, even if NFPA 70 is saying that, I will still recommend my clients to, go with C1, D1 companies like PBS or Protronics or something like that.
Yeah, and on that note as well, right? I think it was a good idea to implement C1 D1. Most C1, the C1 D1 code and expectation is, right, this area is allowed to be operated at 100% LEL. With all the extraction booths really throughout the industry, you have trigger alarms with extra fans turning on at 15 to 25%. So it is a little over engineered, but I think because of where the state of the especially BHO industry was 10 years, I believe it was the right decision. And as we continue to grow so rapidly in new states, my thought on it is, I kind of agree keeping it C1 D1, just for the well-being, and because we have so many options at this point in time, and it's so it's just part of the industry, and there's so many options to get them installed.
Yeah. And I think I read a comment too, and I agree, like, the cost between building a D1 and D2 nowadays is insignificant difference. Maybe you could do like the lights that are different, but overall it's not. It's a little bit of an extra cost. Exhaust seems pretty much the same. So just make a little bit of an extra investment initially, like few $1,000s, to make sure that, you can get away with it. But even if the code says you can, the NFPA 70, I would still say I would go with the stricter one, which is NFPA 58 and NFPA 420 when it comes out.
Really appreciate those you guys' questions and just input on in the chat. I think that was a great little discussion. Our next question is, what's a process hazard analysis and technical assistance report, and where may they be needed?
Well, process hazard analysis could be done on any C1 D1 area or any area in general. So I'll give two examples. One of them would be, for example, a Luna system's installed and in a room, right? Like they build a building, they got a random building. They didn't buy a booth. It was a small room. They changed it into C1D1. They installed it in there. Now, since most booths that you buy come peer reviewed, you don't need to analyze them because you already know they're safe to use because you already analyzed them before. But they bought a room, they're gonna install the exhaust, they're gonna make sure the walls are safe. So over there, you got to do airflow analysis, make sure it's installed in the proper way, proper exhaust taking place in base condition or purge conditions. So that's process head analysis for that room that you do an airflow study on it. Another would be, for example, a grow area. You could have CO2 enrichment taking place in a big CO2 room, and you don't have proper exhaust or gas detection. So, we analyze that and make sure, you have the proper CFM, you have the proper detection, and that's safe to use. But most importantly, I would say process head analysis is important regardless of when you install, because, at the end of the day, you want to make sure your system is installed properly. Technical assistance report is mostly done by a fire protection engineer. That's quite a few good ones. Our company provides that service. We work a lot with Todd LeBurge, who's one of the most experienced, who's written most of these codes. And then this technical assistance report is just analyzing everything, the facility. Like we're analyzing when you're talking about peer review, analyze the equipment, or field inspection, analyze the equipment and the C1D1 room. Technical assistance report analyzes the facility. Like if the facility is safe to use, the storage is done properly. There's the transport of solvent takes place. SOPs are in place. So that's what technical assistance report does. And a process hazard analysis is also for the facility, but it's mostly focused on rooms where you're going to need some kind of ventilation.
Awesome. Yeah. And internally, Luna, we have our own process hazard analysis that our service and support techs use when going to customer sites. So if we're coming out to do a commissioning or install, our guys will walk around the facility just to make sure the areas they'll be working in and where the customers are working in are safe.
Yeah. And then one thing comes from technical assistance report is like path of egress. That's something I just, even if none of the people here ever talk to me, I want them to understand path of egress, understanding how your exit strategy in the building, have a plan ready on your wall showing this is how egress is going to happen. Because that's a big part of process hazard and technical assistance report. And just want to say it regardless. Just want everyone to be safe. My clients.
Great call. Yeah, great call.
Cool. Next question. Can you tell us the importance of working with an MEP and or architectural firm in your planning and building out a lab?
Well, the thing is, importance is in the fact is required regarding of what industry you're in, right? We do architect and mechanical, electrical, and plumbing plans for even restaurants, but the thing is, it's required. Anything commercial you build or even residential, you need an architect. Anything new you build, you need an architect. Anything commercial you build, any extraction area, of course, there's new airflow, there's new fans, there's mechanical drawing. You need to do HVAC analysis. When you change, sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear.
Oh, I think somebody said, oh, mic drop. Oh, that's, never mind. I thought the mic dropped. Anyway, yeah, so you got to do HVAC analysis. You got to do plumbing analysis, how the piping is done. Electrical needs to change. So those plans, those large 36 by 24 plans, those need to be submitted regardless. And especially for this industry where the fire marshals or mechanical inspector, electrical inspectors are going to put their eyes on it like 10 times more. You need to make sure you get an architect and mechanical and plumbing who knows the industry, because I have worked with a bunch of architects that are good. First, I say the good because I've worked with a bunch that do not understand the industry. I've worked with a bunch of electrical engineers who do not understand the industry. And I would always say, it's always good to work with a company that's familiar with cannabis or hemp regulations, because if I work with an architect that knows, that has the plans, then makes my clients get to the finish lines properly. If my architect's working on it that knows cannabis, he's going to get them there faster. If I'm working on the mechanical plans and I'm approving them, there's definitely going to be faster turnaround because I know the codes. I'm not saying I'm a master in the code because nobody ever is an expert, but we know the code because we've done this over the years and we've gone through the rejections over the years and learned from our mistakes. So recommend everyone first thing first, select an equipment and select your architect and MEP team. Peer review side comes a little after that.
Fantastic. Yeah. And Luna's always available to work with both your architects and your MEP firms, whether that be helping with layout, providing 2D and 3D drawings, and then recommendations for line sizes, materials of construction, and then any kind of, custom chiller work or that. So that's pretty much all of the questions I had prepared. I know, Michael, I think you got some questions emailed to you.
Yeah, I had a few. Yeah, so I'm curious just about the top 3 failures or top failures you see when you're doing field inspections.
Okay, first, number one failure is not like the most critical, was most important. It's not the most dangerous one. It was most important in the sense that Luna, I've never had that problem with. System doesn't have a model and serial number. That happens a lot. That happens probably, I would say 80% of the time it happens to me. Companies forget to put a nameplate. And it's one of the biggest reason of failure happens. It's not really a failure. We tell them, get a new nameplate, install it, show us the system's pictures, and we'll approve it. So we're not one of those companies who's going to say, oh, you get rejected, call us again, pay us again to come back. We try to work with the clients, make sure their cost remains as little as possible. Now back to the 3, instead of me advertising myself, let me go to the 3 biggest failures. One of them, of course, nameplates, not installed in a proper environment. Like I said, has to be in a C1D1 area for butane. You can be in a non-classified for ethanol as long as you have proper measures, but it needs to be installed properly. You cannot have non-classified stuff downstream or upstream. And we could discuss that detail if somebody has more questions about C1D2. And the third biggest would be, I think that's 1, that's 2. The third biggest would be your, you don't have proper signage, you don't have proper division between C1D1 and non-classified. And then other would be changing the system is the biggest one of them all. When they just change the system, like, oh, it's a material column, I'll just change it, like without knowing, like that could have a huge impact on your system. So I think that's probably the biggest ones of them all.
Cool. Thank you. What about like storing solvent? Like, is there a maximum capacity inside a controlled space, or does it need to be outside the work area? Can we keep solvent out indoors or outdoors? Talk to us about that.
That depends on the type of facility, right? If you have a normal facility, no sprinkler, then if I'm talking butane, you're around allowed about 150 pounds maximum. If it's sprinklers and has fire suppression, then you're allowed about 300 pounds of butane. And if you have an H classification building, H2 would be for butane. So those are special buildings with the firewalls, 4-hour fire rated walls, proper exhaust. Then you're allowed, I would say, unlimited to the point where the fire marshal puts a cap on it. But do not build an H classification building. Nobody builds it. None of the bigger companies ever do it because it's just not feasible to do. It just doesn't make sense to do. The amount of exhaust it's going to take is going to just take away pretty much most of the profit. It's all about profit nowadays, and you cannot just build these huge rooms. So just, quantities just stay within that range of 300 pounds in a control area. You can have 4 control areas as long as they're sufficiently far apart. And you could have quite a bit of this extraction system. Like you could have 2 Luna system in a proper C1D1 room with a fire suppression in the building and in the room.
Gotcha. So, being the marketing man that I am, all this sounds very complicated. But I'm curious, like, I would love to have an expert on my team if I was a business owner, operator of extraction business. Is there someone specific money is no object. Is there someone specific on my team if I was a new business owner getting into the extraction game? Is there someone that you would recommend that I have on my team that should be the interface with all this stuff, with all the rules and regulations, and you? And is there someone in particular you typically work with, or who should I have on my team? Is there a specific expert I need?
There's a bunch of experts, right? Like usually people have an expert on their team that they hire.
Yeah.
I rely on mostly the equipment manufacturers. They are the expert of their machine. No other expert knows more than them. I know Two Bridges is one expert. There's a couple others that I know about. But Two Bridges is a good one. But mostly, just I agree with you. There needs to be an expert. I mean, I wouldn't recommend anyone just saying that I recommend them, because I won't take responsibility of other people's work, except for the systems I've analyzed. But there's consultant out there, and I'd recommend having one that could direct you in these directions. Get the proper architect, proper mechanical engineer, proper equipment, proper engineer for reviewing this facility.
Yeah, maybe you're the expert we hire. Bryce has a question. What are your thoughts on fire suppression choices? Do you recommend a booth FS system or versus using the building fire sprinkler system?
I would recommend a separate fire suppression for the booths, but I mean, if you have building has proper fire suppression, it should be fine. At the end of the day, I mean, cost about the same, but yeah, just make your booth completely separate with the fire suppression, because it's just, I would just think it's safer.
Okay. Any tips on working with our local authorities, so to speak?
Don't piss them off.
And those relationships, don't piss them off. And those relationships.
Oh, you'd be surprised how many clients do piss them off. Oh man.
Yeah, do tell.
Or engineers, I'm not gonna say names, but the people piss them off, man. Just, the fire marshals are very important. They have a tough job, fire marshal or building officials. I mean, they have to work really hard to make sure a fire doesn't happen where they're in charge of. And people try to think that they're just being hard and difficult on them. But you gotta understand that these people are in charge of this area, and you're gonna create a fire here. Of course, they're gonna get really tough about it. They're gonna make sure every single dot is, you have every single I dotted, T's crossed. You gotta make sure of that. And sometimes people just think, they're just being difficult or something. And I was like, okay. And that leads to more problems, because I think same thing, if you ask nicely, there's sometimes, you can achieve more. So be nice to your authorities having jurisdiction, even if you think they're being unreasonable, which I don't think 90% of the time they are, 99% of the time they are. And then the other thing, just make sure with AHJ is, you have someone to be your voice. Like, if you have a peer review, if you bought an equipment from Luna, for example, make sure they're connected to the fire department in case the fire department might have any questions from them. You bought a booth from a company, make sure they're connected to them. Definitely your engineers is connected to them. Your engineer, of course, your architect, and your engineers, your peer review engineers, we're going to be the one directly sending those documents to these fire marshals. So we need to be connected to them as well.
Yeah, and I would add to being proactive as a lab, reaching out, providing, more than, gather all the information you can, and being the proactive one to stay in contact and be reaching out to them is super helpful. And like Usama was saying, we're more than happy. Luna is to kind of help be the liaison, more or less, in terms of reaching out to your specific fire marshals or your AHJ, getting them access to our customer portal so they have access to all the same documentation the customer has, and just kind of help navigate anything before they're actually on site, just so they're prepared and know exactly what they're walking into and no surprises.
Oh, I like this. Catherine, I like this last comment. I agree. As little as possible, because sometimes makes my life more difficult when the client's thing opposite to what the real reality is on the field.
Usama, what's it like from start to finish to get up and running? I know it can vary, but a best case scenario, worst case scenario, what do you typically see? I know you touched on that earlier, but
what is it like from start to finish? I mean, it could be a lot of frustration sometimes. I
Or
would
like
think
timing wise?
timing wise, I would say it takes 6 months to 3 years. It could take anywhere in between that time,
Wow.
never before 6 months. And then, I mean, there's different processes, like I said before, always start with selecting an equipment and your architect and MEP. That's your first step. I have had projects where they had the equipment, they had everything built, but they didn't have the architect plans. So we submitted everything, but they were delayed by another year because the architect plans took a year to get approved. So get your architect MEP, get your equipment selected. Once that is done, contact us or Luna. In this case, Luna would definitely get them to contact us because that's the equipment we reviewed. And make sure every single aspect of your facility is safe. And once that is done, then there's a back and forth process. Of course, any fire marshal is going to have comments, and as they should. It's their jurisdiction on the plans. Fire marshal, not only fire marshal, building and safety, they're going to have comments. Different inspectors are going to have different comments. Make sure those are taken care of. Make sure peer reviews are done, field inspections done. You call them in for final inspection. They might have a few comments. For example, the most common one, like I've seen, is proper hazard diamond wasn't in place, or fire extinguisher wasn't on the wall. I mean, make sure those little things are taken care of. They'll come, they'll tell you, make these small corrections. If everything is up and up, of course, they'll tell you to make these small corrections. They'll come back a week or two later and approve you, and then you should be good to go from there. But that's just saying everything goes smoothly. I mean, there is going to be partners disagreement or client sometimes sometimes it's just bad luck. Sometimes you did everything right, but the fire marshal wants it a certain way, and then you just have to adhere to it.
Well, a couple of questions in the comments, if you can address those. I don't know if you've seen that.
So Josue asked, have you had any jurisdictions requiring documentation on process training for technicians?
Yes.
We're seeing that more and more. For Luna specifically, most times they just require, so our process training, we have about a 3 to 4 hour safety training PowerPoint that we do with everyone. And then we do the hands-on at the lab, actual process training, filling the machine, going over maintenance, recipe creation. So with that, we create, like a training plaque saying whoever was at that passed this. And then certain jurisdictions will send that safety training PowerPoint and the operation manual to them for them to have on file. So we're starting to see that more and more in different states.
Cool. And there's another one about solutions for post-processing ventilation and rated rooms for products with low LEL, but ventilation is still desired.
I would always recommend this, right? This is what I'd recommend. Let's say if you have a BHO facility, connect your diamond miner directly to your collection vessel, always, and off-gas it back into the system. That's the one thing I always notice, and that's the one thing I always recommend. Once that is done, once the BHO goes to the vacuum oven room or vacuum, make sure there's 1 CFM per square foot in that room. Those two always follow that. And give it some time to off-gas, maybe 24 hours. First run would be delayed, but then if you have 2 or 3 diamond miners, then you could offset that. But please give it time. Please make sure that's taken care of. So you might not even need an LEL detector at that point in the second room.
And Catherine had another one. How is the rise of diamonds? You kind of hit on a little bit. How is the rise of diamonds as a product affected safety? Are mason jars full of solvent ever kosher in the C1, D1 space?
I would say as less solvent as possible. I mean, yes, you could have jars, but it did need to be off-gassed. You cannot take it out of the C1, D1 space, but as little solvent as possible. I understand, you got to make different products, but as little as possible and try to recover most of it.
Yeah. We just have a few more minutes. I have another question here that we got off social media, just about as regulations continue to evolve, how can businesses stay up to date with changes and adapt their practices to remain compliant?
There's multiple things to that. Like we update our document for our clients At least, for example, Luna or other manufacturers, we do the peer reviews where we try to update documents on a yearly basis, so it updates to the every single code. When it comes to facility, it is, and NFPA 4420 is going to make it a requirement that do a field inspection on a yearly basis. Call us in. I know it's a little bit overhead cost, and I understand that it's annoying, and I never force it upon my clients, but it's a requirement for certain jurisdictions. And a lot of jurisdictions have made it like now it's going to happen. So at least 60-70% of jurisdictions are making us go every year. And that makes sure that while you're changing every year, you have your engineers, involve your equipment manufacturer too that you bought it from. Hey, is there any changes? Do you want to send me any new equipment that you can make changes and make sure the equipment stays up to code every year? So I recommend that, let's say if you got it from Luna, stay in touch with Luna. Make sure if they tell you, they're not telling you to make a sale. They're telling you to make sure you stay compliant if a big change comes in. Same thing for us. We come in for field inspection. We got to make sure you stay compliant year-to-year basis.
And kind of along those lines, always recommend, follow your maintenance schedules. Don't replace stuff on your machines when they fail. Follow the, set amount of hours to replace your diaphragms on your pumps. It's super beneficial and much safer just to follow your strict schedule.
What are the differences in compliance requirements for Canada and USA?
I can answer that one. So the main differences, so if we look at both the mechanical side and the electrical side, any process piping components over 15 PSI in Canada require what's called a Canadian registration number. And then an entire skid also requires a separate, it's similar to a peer review, but it's individual to every province in Canada. So for instance, the way that Luna does it, we have all of our 4 ASME vessels and our ASME heat exchangers, all built by our CRN shop, and they have their own CRN number on it. And then the rest of the components used in the entire machine all have their own registration number as well for that specific province. And then we get one for the entire skid. And that's the main regulation on getting equipment up there. And then of course the difference is the CSA, which is UL. There's also CUL, but CSA is the main agency for electrical. So we just use electrical components that are rated for CSA, and then use CUL panels for up in Canada. And then the same for everything else in terms of NFPA and IFC. We just see it pretty much just follows the IFC guidelines for the install and processing.
Yeah, CRN is a pain in the ass, guys. But it's not that difficult, but it's much more than ASME requirements, especially in BC. But that's what Pratt said. I'm 100% agree with that. That's the requirements over there.
And we have CRNs in every province, so if you guys need machines in Canada, just let us know.
Yeah. Well, I think we're getting close to it. Unless anybody else has any other comments, what's the best way to get a hold of you? I kind of dropped some links in there, Usama. What's the best way to reach you?
I could just type my email and
do that. Look that up. And I dropped in our URL for Luna Technologies if you guys need any more information. We really appreciate everyone joining us today. Pat, Usama, any closing thoughts or comments you guys want to impart to our audience?
Mine would always be just focus on safety, guys. Even if you've never worked with us or even never with Luna, just make sure you're safe. Just get the safest equipment, do your homework, just get someone to help you through the process, and make sure that all the things we talked about, at least most of them, are implemented in your facility.
Yep, I completely agree. Safety first. That should be your main concern. Really doing it in any industry. And like Usama said, I mean, me especially, I'm always happy to take phone calls, emails, help out with planning, or questions with other equipment. Safety it's very important to me. So something that I'm always willing to talk about, help out, anything.
Sweet. Thanks, everybody. We'll talk to you later.
All right. Thank you.
Appreciate you guys. Thanks.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for listening.
Bye now.